recording the meeting. And I have a short introduction and then we can jump into the questions. So hello everyone, my name is Morgan Hughes with the South Dakota Specialty Producers Association. Thank you everyone for joining us this morning. We have with us 4 panel members that are going to share about their experiences in specialty crop production, how that influenced the positions that they hold today, and discuss finding opportunities within the specialty crop industry. We're excited to have everyone together today to go over their experiences. Our ability to host this webinar is supported through a specialty crop block grant that South Dakota Specialty Producers Association received through the South Dakota Department of Ag and Natural Resources. We have 90 minutes set aside for this webinar, and we will reserve 15 minutes at the end for a Q&A. You're welcome to put any questions that come to mind in the chat, and we'll do our best to have them answered. With that, I'd like to start by having the 4 panelist members introduce themselves and describe the farm that they're currently managing or the work that they're currently doing.
I can start. My name is Laura Patzer here. My husband and I own Cherry Rock Farms over here in Brandon, South Dakota. We are a 4th generation farm, and we've been managing and owning it for the past 9 years.
And my name is Kyle Cox. I run Cox's Farm Stand here in Vail, South Dakota. We raise primarily sweet corn and tomatoes and melons, and pretty much produce for the Rapid City area.
My name's Kirsten Oudman. My husband and I own Blue Sky Vegetable Company down in Worthing, South Dakota, and this will be our 3rd year in production in South Dakota. And we primarily sell in the Sioux Falls area through a farm share program.
My name is Martin Jones. I work for Rick and Michelle Grosick at Bearview Gardens in Sturgis, South Dakota. We grow a variety of vegetables, all organic, and we also have some poultry, some chickens and turkeys, as well as some goats and sheep. And we have like a CSA program as well as a farm stand where we sell fresh produce, and also we process and preserve stuff and sell it there too.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to hearing all of your perspectives. So the next question is, can you share a little bit about what type of work experience you participated in leading up to the role you're in now? Were any of them formal internships or mentorship programs?
I can start. So the first thing I did when I realized I was interested in farming was to do a formal internship, and I did that at a nonprofit farm down in Waco, Texas called World Hunger Relief. And it was actually set up specifically for people to go overseas and do agricultural development work. But their mission kind of shifted over the years, and so by the time I got there, there was still a little bit of the international focus, but it was more focused on Waco, and doing managing a market garden. So I was a produce intern, and there were 2 of us, so we were in charge of a 1-acre market garden and had to manage volunteers who would come and work on the farm, and that was a year-long internship. So that was most of my main formal training. Other than that, I honestly kind of jumped in. And then in 2021, our first year here, we did the Moses, or now Marble Seed, mentorship program. And so we had a couple who are farming in Minnesota. They were our mentors, and so they walked us through. It was really open-ended. It was kind of based on what we wanted. And we wanted a little bit more insight into how to holistic plan for our farm. And so they walked us through holistic planning, helped us kind of set up a plan. We toured their farm, they toured our farm, and we had monthly calls to kind of troubleshoot whatever we wanted. So they really helped us out that year, and they're not it was only a 1-year mentorship, but we'll still like text them or call them up and say, hey, haven't run across this before. Because they've been farming probably about 12 years.
I can go next. I started my first position in farming was at Bearview Gardens, and it was just a simple. I just applied for the job, and but then after my first summer there, I started my junior year, the official youth internship program through my high school. So I would go out there essentially as a replacement for a block of my school day every other day. So that was like my first official internship, and then in the spring of this year or last year, May of 2023. I entered into an official apprenticeship through the Department of Labor through this specific grant for specialty agriculture. And as part of that apprenticeship, I've basically been out there full time since May. And I'm taking a class on soil and water management through Lake Area Tech. It's a dual credit class. So all of my experience farming has been at Bearview Gardens, but I've been in those two official internship and apprenticeship positions. So.
Yeah, I grew up on the farm that I currently work, and I after I got done with high school and everything, I went to the Army for 12 years, and then I came back and jumped right into farming, and no formal training, pretty much just learning on the fly.
And I think our story is similar. We're a fourth generation farm here. So my husband and I moved from Ohio 9 years ago, and we are fortunate enough to still have my father-in-law living on the land with us. So he's lived here his entire life. So we've kind of been under his internship, for lack of a really loose term, but he's kind of been showing us everything from the ground up. And then what we aren't getting from him, we've been supplementing from other sources, some other farmers that we're friends with across the United States that kind of have walked alongside us and taught us what we need to know.
Great. My next question is how you got connected with the work that you did or are doing in the specialty crop industry. So for Kyle and Laura, it sounds like the answer to that is family or it being generational. But if Kirsten or Martin has anything to add about how they got connected to these positions.
I kind of just started like before the summer that I started working at Bearview Gardens. I started getting interested in gardening and farming. My grandma is a master gardener through the SDSU course, so she helped me out a lot. And I was looking for a job, and my mom just saw the posting for Bearview Gardens, and we kind of knew the owners. One of my mom's friends was like friends with them, so I had a pretty good recommendation there. And I kind of just applied for the job and got it. I thought it might be fun, and then never really looked back.
Um, he got interested in agriculture in college, in a very roundabout way. I always thought I was going to work with animals and as like a wildlife manager, biologist. Sorry if you hear crying in the background from my child. And then realized through doing some work in wildlife biology that that's not where I wanted to be. And so kind of stumbled on agriculture, but didn't grow up on a farm. I grew up in Sioux Falls, very much like a city person at the time. So I realized I needed some training. So that's what led me to seek out the internship in Texas. And while there, I met my now husband. So after we got married, he managed a small nonprofit farm while I went to grad school. And then after I went to grad school, then we found a farm for lease in Wisconsin and just honestly kind of jumped in. Probably didn't have enough training to do it, but we did it anyways. And then now we're here.
My next question is, can you describe what were some of the very valuable things about the way that your work was set up or managed so that you were able to get the most out of your experience?
I think if I just kind of speak to, obviously it's coming from a different side other than like an internship apprenticeship. But when we first moved here, this is my husband's family farm, but we honestly, other than having a large garden back in Ohio, we hadn't really like planned for or ever done anything on this scale that we do. We farm about 50 acres here just outside of Sioux Falls. Um, so what we really did was just kind of sit and soak in my father-in-law's 70 years of experience. And it was a lot of hands-on. We were fortunate enough that we had one of our kind of farmer friends from Ohio come out and help on the farm to show us, because we were doing things a little bit differently than what my father-in-law did traditionally, that being more organic, natural farming. So we really just it was all hands on. And that was our biggest thing is, you can watch the YouTube videos, you can talk to other people, but until you're out there and like managing the different crops and pests and lack of water and too much water, you really need that. The hands-on experience was critical for us to figure out how we could like grow our business and form our business in years to come.
Yeah, my family had also started doing sweet corn and tomatoes. We've done it for a couple generations of sweet corn and stuff, but then my family decided to do about 3 acres of corn and got up to about 3 acres of corn and maybe like 50 to 200 tomato plants. And then I came back in 2013 and I decided I wanted to be a little bit bigger. So I got mechanized and got decided to go up to about a lot larger of a farm and be a little more into the marketing and selling. So that's guess where I started and went with it. So
I would say so for my internship, it was very much like the interns were just thrown in and not given a whole lot of oversight. So you really kind of learned in a trial by fire. But you also had someone who had been there for 6 months. So they would have one person come in January, one person come in June or July. And so you could learn from someone. And that was helpful. I would also say that when we leased a farm in Wisconsin, it was already a farm business that had been running for 20 years, and they had just had a couple different managers. And so we were able to talk to previous managers, but they had all of the equipment that a vegetable farm could ever hope to have, because the history of the farm is they bought a lot of equipment, more than they probably needed. But we were able to use that opportunity to try out different tools, try out different techniques. And while I would say that's not an opportunity that everyone could have, because that farm was very unique, being able to see different farms or work on different size of farms would be some way that other people could try to really key into how they want to farm, or how what system fits them best.
I would say that the most like valuable way that my work is set up, and the way that it's most valuable to me, is that it kind of feels like everything is set up in a way that it's not just working and farming, but it's also learning. And that's both in a formal and informal way. Formally, through the internship and apprenticeship, they allow me to spend a lot more time out there doing a lot more things. And like that class I mentioned, I'm actually learning that through Lake Area Tech. And so there's a lot of learning both through the youth internship and the apprenticeship program. But then it's also very valuable the fact that I'm kind of the only, like, basically at Bearview Gardens, it's me, Michelle, and Teresa. And so there's not very many of us, and I'm the one who's there most of the time. So a lot of the time, Michelle will just send me up to the gardens and say, like, these are the things we need to get done today. This is what we need to work on. And she asked me for my input and like stuff that we need to do. So a lot of it is like not necessarily self-paced, but I'm working on my own. And so I'm kind of learning as I work and as I um, figure out what needs to be addressed and how to address it. I'm coming up with those solutions a lot of the time, working with Michelle, but also just on my own, coming to those answers and learning those skills that I need. So it's both formal and informal, but all in all, my work is set up in a way that is very focused on learning, not just working.
Some of you touched on this already with the last question, but was there anything that your manager specifically did that made the experience more valuable or enjoyable?
Kind of like I just said, like when Michelle is when we talk about it and she just sends me up there to work and we know what we need to get done. It just makes it very, yeah, like valuable for learning and teaching myself what I need to do and how to do it. But also she's just like my manager is incredibly um she's just helpful in every way. She's super forgiving and like if you make a mistake, she's not gonna yell at you. She's just gonna teach you how to do it better in the future and turn basically everything into a learning experience. So just having that positive work environment where you're not afraid to make mistakes because you know you'll just be helped and fix those mistakes is super important for learning. If you can't be in an environment where you feel comfortable making those mistakes and like you're going to get the help you need, then it's kind of hard to get that value. But Michelle does a great job.
I can kind of speak from like, we actually just opened up our internship position out here. We bring on 2 interns every year. And what we really try to do is come alongside them throughout the season, but also show them every step in the process. During that time, they're kind of identifying areas of interest. And it's always our hope as we're working with the teacher, because it is a class credit. We work with Southeast Tech and as well as we take high school interns. Um, we kind of figure out like a capstone project, for lack of a better term, where we're really coming alongside our intern and helping them just through the whole process. And we've seen a lot of success. We'll have interns, they're taking their classes during the day and then they'll come to us, various days similar to like the block setting for our high school interns. And, they'll identify things that we haven't seen because we live here and I do this year after year. So it's been really amazing to just allow our interns like the freedom to identify a problem or identify a better way of doing things once they've been in our or on our farm, like working through just various things. And it's been fun to watch them kind of grow, write their papers, do presentations on what they learned here and feeling empowered, like, this is something that they're interested in the future. And we actually have had several interns that are now just full-time employees for us that are kind of more like farm managers for us now.
I think one thing that was valuable to me when I was an intern was we did like book studies along about some farming books, like what the JM40A's, the Market Gardener, and then the farm I was working on was a bio-intensive farm, and so is it John Jevons out in California? That's his kind of style. He had a whole workbook. So our manager kind of walked us through. We like did a book study with our manager and then saw how that book learning applied to the field. And then when we had interns in Wisconsin, we tried to replicate that and heard feedback that that was helpful because, everyone learns differently. Some people learn better from reading and then some people learn better through doing. So being able to reach people on the different ways of learning, I think was valuable to me and hopefully valuable to employees that we've had.
Great, thank you. I think those answers would be helpful for both interns and employees, as well as business owners or employers as they're looking for their interns. My next question is, if you could go back in time, what are some things that you wish were different about the work you did or your path to your current position or becoming a business owner?
I would have worked on more farms. my husband and I kind of just jumped into farming right after like one internship, and we had a lot of failures. And in especially like 2019 is just kind of one of those years where if we say 2019 to each other, we just know that it was a really bad year farming, and it was in part because we didn't really know what we were doing. And so we just made a lot of mistakes that if we had worked on other farms and if we had had a broader range of experiences, maybe we could have saved ourselves some of the challenges and hardships. And I think my husband and I have like tried to go on a lot of farm tours or talk to a lot of different farmers at conferences, because you learn a lot from other farms, because everyone has a different way of farming, everyone has a different context, and so you can pick up these little clues or techniques on any different farm. And so like doing farm tours is great because you can still pick up things, but I think if I had worked for a whole season at a different farm, how much more could I have picked up? So that's something that I wish I had done, wish I had worked on, one or two other farms before we had jumped into farming for ourselves full time.
I think like the one thing that we learned as farming in a whole and have learned over the past, like I said, we've owned the farm for 9 years, is we've learned and tried to like even teach some of our interns that have moved on and are farming in other areas, like can't just look at like that 1 year picture, because as Kirsten mentioned, it's like 2019 was terrible for us too. And if you just look at that 1 year, then you're out. Like, so we've kind of learned like farming is you kind of look more over the years and you prepare for the worst every year, and then kind of manage things through the process. And the worst might be a little bit too dramatic, but what we really have to focus on is, yeah, there's 1 year and then 2020 is better and then 2021 is better. And you never really know, especially here with the weather and other just various things that can happen. I think that the most encouragement my father-in-law ever gave us was when we first moved here. We had just moved in, we had 3 small kids, like a 6-week-old baby, and we flooded. We were watching the water come up, and he said, you can't just look at this 1 year, you have to just stay focused. And we've been running this farm for, now this will be our 99th year in our family. And he said there's highs and lows and you just got to stick with it, and you learn more every year. And so it's just, I think the advice that I wish, because I wanted to give it all up after our first year, is, you just have to stick with it. Like with any job, there's highs and lows. And the more you lean on other people, the more knowledge you gain every year, the more comfortable you feel, and the more you're equipped to kind of deal with the just different intricacies of farming.
I've only worked in agriculture for a couple years, so a little early to be having any kind of, I don't know, regrets. Not that it's necessarily we're talking about regrets, but just things I wish I had done different. I don't really have anything. I kind of wish that I were born in like it would be cool if I was actually from a farm. South Dakota, or Sturgis isn't a city by any means, but living in town, I come from basically no agricultural background. So just like jumping into it at the age of 16 with people who have been doing it for years is a little bit intimidating, but I'm still happy I did it. And there's nothing really I would change, honestly.
Kyle, I think you're muted.
Oh, sorry about that. Well, what I was saying is that I wish I would have probably probably would have gotten mechanized a little bit earlier or got some more equipment earlier, so it would have been easier instead of just plowing through everything or manhandling it all. Try to do it a little more easier. It's probably my only thing I would probably wish I would have done.
And kind of on the flip side of that, what do you think the value of working in agriculture prior to moving into a management position of your own was, or vice versa for Kyle and Laura? What was the value, or what value do you find in the path that you took to get where you are today?
I can kind of talk just about the value or just a little bit about my background. I have a business and an accounting degree, so that's what I did previously when I was in Ohio. And so I kind of took that side and I manage our whole business. I do all of our marketing, all of our payroll, all of our accounting. So that was integral just as we're a growing business to manage like the boring business side of it, which is not what my husband wants to do. He wants to be out doing the farming side of it. So I think his path, this is his dad's farm. So he obviously was familiar enough, moved away until middle adulthood to come back and take over the farm. So I think his path would probably have been more, I bet he wishes he were here just a smidge earlier, but he also owned his own business. So I think that really set us up to more like manage the business side of things, which is kind of some of the tricky parts of farming is, there's just a lot of background other than just throwing things in the ground and, hoping they grow. So that's been really beneficial just from our side of it, that I'm able to take on that and then he can kind of focus on the farming. So that was the good part about our paths, not having a ton of traditional like farming on this scale. It's been great that we can actually have the business side under control and then just focus on learning and how we're going forward with the growing side.
I'll say my 12 years in the Army, I was after being in there and trying to, after going through 4 deployments and all that kind of stuff and coming back and working on the land and doing that kind of stuff, it was kind of a nice little thing. It's kind of like the same kind of emotions you had in the military. You brought in privates, I would say just like your vegetables, you got your seedlings and you raised them all the way up until they made it to the next level or whatever. It was the same kind of qualities that it was kind of nice to have when I came back to the farm.
I would say for us, we being thrown into a management position without a lot of formal training or jobs really, like Laura said, really made us realize the business side. Because I think before that we were like, oh, as long as we can, grow some plants, we won't have any troubles. And realized that that's very much not the case, that you really need to know your numbers. You really need to know how much you're charging, where you're selling, how much you're paying people, how much you're paying yourself. Because without that, you can't run a business, you can't keep farming. You need to make sure that your numbers make sense, because otherwise it's just a very expensive hobby.
So I don't have really any, prior agriculture experience. I'm kind of in the stage right now of getting that prior agricultural experience. So I'm kind of on the beginning of that path into a management position. But I think that it's kind of like what I said with the last question, especially for someone who doesn't come from an agricultural background, being able to gain that foundation of knowledge that you need, because to manage somebody on how to do something, you have to know how to do what you're telling them to do. And so you really can't be in a management position like that unless you actually know the subject material. And it's also especially helpful to have those good role models and those good leaders in management, because they give a pretty good like example of how to be a manager. So like one day, if I'm managing on some agricultural production, whatever, I have that. Like I remember how my managers were and how my bosses were and how they treated me and the lessons they taught me, and I can take those things forward. So having that experience in the past with somebody who's managed you before, it allows you to, for one, know what you're talking about, and then two, know what works and what doesn't. So having that experience prior is really important.
My last few questions are some advice-based questions. So, what advice do you have for individuals that are new to the industry and looking to find an internship or position, but might be unsure where to look or where to start?
My words of advice is to start small, have your have what you want to get out of it, have that maybe set in stone so that you know what you're trying to get to. Um, Expectations, make sure that you know that you may not be 100% successful your first year, but just keep on going. And that's about it for me.
I think the main thing that we kind of encourage folks, if they're outside of like the general like Southeast Tech, like I talked about who we partner with, and the high schools, is most people work off farm, obviously. So just start putting in hours at a local farm. It's pretty, they're popping up everywhere, which is amazing. And if you kind of are able to, work a weekend or a couple of days here and there, depending on what your other full-time job is, just really to make sure you know what you're getting into, because I think that that's one of the things that we hear quite a bit of the interns that either don't come back or don't seek like um, a role on a farm later on, is it's really hard work and they weren't aware of everything that went in and out of it. And I know that that sounds crazy, but it is. And a lot of people just don't understand like the work that it entails. So if you can put in hours and kind of just see if you have a taste for it, and then potentially maybe move into more hours or more of an internship role, or as you're talking, you're working intimately on these small farms, at least across South Dakota. You're right next to, I'm working side by side. I always tell everyone that joins us is there's never a job on this farm that I don't do as well. So I think knowing what you're getting into, a lot of people think it's just going to be so romantic and you're going to be out with this beautiful basket and this gorgeous hat, picking, and it's not. It's hard work, it's dirty, it's buggy, it's rainy, it's muddy, and know what you're getting into, and it's beautiful, so there's pros and cons to every position, every job, that every career you're going to have through your life. And I think really mainly before diving in, kind of like Kirsten did, maybe you want to like really put in some hours and make sure it's something that you're a passion for, because it's an expensive, like Kirsten was saying too, it's an expensive hobby if you don't know what you're getting yourself into, and are kind of realizing down the road that it's not something that you're interested in.
Yeah, I would say just ask farms. Like like Laura said, just put in a couple hours. I mean, I don't know of any farms that would say, "Oh no, we don't need any help." Every single farm would take, 4 hours or whatever you have to give. Um, and there are a lot of farms that are hiring for full-time positions in the summer or seasonal positions, and those are great. But if you don't know if you even would like that, then start small. We had 2 interns in 2020 in Wisconsin, and they stayed from April until August. And at the end, we were kind of going through like, oh, how did this go? And they both told us, well, we've realized we don't want to farm. And we're like, well, at least you know that now. So even if that is your realization, then that's good. then you haven't really lost anything. You've gained some understanding. So yeah, just get your hands dirty, offer to help at farmer's market, offer to help harvesting or planting or whatever anyone needs. And you'll pick up something.
I would say, kind of going along with what everybody else said, like almost any farm is going to take your help if you want to try and find a place just to start helping out and see if you like farming. But I also think it's important to remember that you're not alone. There are a lot of organizations that exist. Like if you are going to college, I've been looking into college a lot. I'm a senior in high school, and there's a number of colleges. And one of the things I'm looking for the most is internship programs, and specifically like after school, like after you graduate, their colleges have programs that can set you up with a position at a farm, or even while you're still going to school, maybe working at a farm. So I would just say use your resources, like schools, internship through the high school, like I said, that I have. But then even outside of school, there's, I guess I'm not sure. I don't want to speak with too much confidence because I don't know. But, like South Dakota Specialty Producers, and then like other organizations like the NRCS, the Natural Resource Conservation Services, and even just the Department of Labor. There are a number of organizations that are in place to help farmers, and specifically the Department of Labor, that actually help place people into those apprenticeships and internships and job positions in the field they're looking for. So I would say that it's important to remember, like I said, you're not alone. There are a lot of organizations that exist to help people who are trying to get into farming, and even for producers who are already farming. So just know those resources, know what's available to you, and try and reach out to those. Cast a wide net, looking for all sorts of offers, and there's a lot of groups that'll help. So I would say remembering those things.
So on the flip side of that, what advice do you have for producers that are looking to hire, such as ways to market, possible recruitment connections, or any other advice?
My advice is this is probably kind of sounds like a burden to the farmer, but in the winter, write everything down, like write your processes down. So write like what happens when you wash up vegetables. Okay, if you take tomatoes from the field, what's the process, what's the steps that go all the way to them being ready to be sold? And do that for all of your crops, because I've found in our like limited employee, the few times that we've had employees, that having that as a resource where they could even just like go check in the morning when they know we're going to do a harvest is a really big thing. And so have all of your processes in like a sheet of paper or something, a binder that they can look at and refer to, because a lot of the times, like they'll be working after working a couple of weeks, they won't want to come and say like, hey, I forgot how to do this, can you remind me? And so then that can lead to some frustration of like, oh, you're doing it wrong. Whereas if you have it all written down, then employees can just refer to that. And hopefully that helps with some of the expectations. I would also say that in general, farms, we do not pay a lot for our employees. We had a employee in 2021 who was worth way more than we paid her. We paid her $12 an hour, and looking back, we just kind of cringe because she was worth like $20 an hour. But we have to, I think that's a challenge that's facing farms, is how do we attract good employees? And part of that is being willing to pay them probably more than 11.20 or whatever minimum wage is now. So then we also have to like be able to know our numbers and make sure that we are able to pay that to someone. As far as like marketing jobs, I know there's a bunch of classifieds or like help wanted places for farming. I know like Marble Seed has one where you could post job listings. I can't think of the names of a couple of others, but I know there are, if you Google organic farming job listings, there's a couple of work boards out there online that you could post. But also just like social media, word of mouth, those all work.
I would say that as far as like ways to market and stuff, the most important thing is to remember that you're not just a farmer, you're also a business. So your farming has to be tied in with your marketing, but it also just, you have to have a lot of focus on marketing and on doing things other than just farming. So like at Bearview Gardens, we have events where we have like dinners where we use the crops that we produce to make a dinner, or other just like festivals and stuff like that, depending on the time of year. So just hosting those events that kind of brings people out to your farm and raises awareness for what you're doing are really important. But then also I would say it's important to remember that you're not alone. Like I mentioned in my last question, not only are there organizations like the NRCS and South Dakota Specialty Producers who are very helpful for farmers who want to have help marketing their products. Like I know we've worked with both those organizations, and like they'll send you, I don't know, just like these posters we have and stuff that have information. And so just remembering those resources that will help you with marketing, but also collaboration with other like producers in the area is just super important, and it helps you, both your business and those other businesses. Like we do these farm tours where we take a bus of people and they visit Bearview Gardens and then a number of other producers in the area, and this brings people not only to Bearview Gardens but also to all these other places, and just kind of raises awareness for the agricultural community in the places where you live. So when you do that collaboration with other farms and with other organizations, you move your business out of just the field and out of just the crops you're growing and into the actual community as a whole. And when you get that collaboration, you're not only getting your name out there, but you're sort of what you're all about and your mission and showing people what you're doing. And so I just think the most important thing for marketing is that collaboration and extending your business beyond just your farm. It goes way further than that. And then as far as like hiring people, I would say, sorry, I don't know why my microphone keeps doing this thing. As far as hiring people, I would say just focusing on going through like schools and stuff. Again, those internship programs are really helpful. They help a lot of people get placements. And then also just through the Department of Labor, applying for grants and stuff and trying to set up those positions that will give somebody like a secure and not necessarily permanent, but like a job that they know they can rely on and have for a long time, and making sure those are sort of attractive to bring the right people in. But yeah.
Us as a farm, we go to a lot of career fairs. That's where we've been able to kind of start with Southeast Tech, Brandon, a couple Sioux Falls schools. We also teach some classes, so we'll partner with some teachers just to kind of get people interested, like when they can see like a hands-on instead of just listening from their instructor. If we can come alongside and just horticulture class or something, just to give some hands-on, some knowledge and experience, we've found that really gets people interested in coming out and seeing what we do. So that's just kind of in addition to what everyone else said. There's always opportunities to speak. We go in high schools and we do planting classes, and also just speak to the different I just spoke at agriculture management class, just to kind of give them an idea of what we do, let them know what we have to offer out there. And that's how we have gotten all of our interns, or kind of some of those more specialized positions in the past.
All right. Those are all of my prepared questions. So I just want to give all the panelists the opportunity to share any other thoughts that they might have. Otherwise, we can move into the Q&A portion of the webinar. So does anyone else have any thoughts that they'd like to share before we move into the questions? All right. So feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions, or type them into the chat and I can relay them to the panelists.
I have a quick question for you guys. So I'm a graduate study student and I study weed control methods. And I was curious if there's any weed control methods that you guys use on your farms that has really been a game changer. I know, Kyle, you were talking about how you wish that you'd bought more equipment for weed management instead of just like chugging through it and like I guess for like the work side of things. But yeah, I guess I'm curious what weed management strategies that have helped you guys maybe reduce labor or things like that.
So on my weed management, we do everything. We changed everything to under plastic now and with drip tape. So that takes care of the weeds that are immediately next to the plant. And then this last year, I just bought a cultivator to clean up the plastic or clean up on the outside of the plastic and in between the plastics. And that really helped out for my weed management from last year and hopefully to improve it again for next year too. And but before that, I would hire day labor to go out and pull weeds and help me pull weeds. And like I said, that was just too much work.
At Bearview Gardens, we have two basically main weed control methods. One of them is just like plastic, kind of like Kyle said, with the plastic over the drip tape. So, that prevents a lot of crops or a lot of weeds from growing. And then the other main weed management strategy we use is me. Me and Teresa and Michelle spend a lot of time out in the summer just pulling weeds because there are a lot of crops that having that plastic doesn't really work. You can't do weed control that way. And it depends on the size of your operation. There are some operations that are much larger than Bearview Gardens where having to rely on just manual labor to pull weeds for some fields just isn't really an option. But it all just depends on the needs and the size of your operation. But for the most part, having plastic over and planting seeds in between the plastic has been the most helpful way to reduce weeds. We've been trying it out with different crops. Like this summer, we tried it with corn for the first time, and that was incredibly successful. Way less weed pulling than the year before. So it's kind of always just figuring out what works and what doesn't, what plants you can use plastic for, and what plants you should consider other methods for.
Yeah, we also use plastic mulch and drip tape. And that's we never really wanted to be into plastic culture, but we have so many weeds that it's a huge benefit to us in our labor time. We also have a 1952 Alice G cultivator tractor that I'm gonna be honest, I don't use it. Dirk uses it. He does all that stuff with the tractor. But it seems to work pretty well. We're also going to try on a couple of different crops to do like 3-foot wide strips of landscape fabric between our plastic rows. Just because there's a couple sections on our farm that we're really struggling with perennial weeds like thistles or bindweed, and the cultivation doesn't necessarily seem to like be getting rid of those. So we're just going to try to tarp them with the landscape fabric, see if that helps at all. And then I see Connor's in the group, so I'll just give him a shout out that we're also doing a trial with SDSU and with Connor to try living mulch between pathways see if that helps with the weeds at all as well.
I don't really have any method than what was mentioned. We farm on a big scale, so we do a lot of cultivating through tractors. We also employ quite a few people that I tell them it's their summer workout. So we just go out there and hoe and hoe and hoe for hours. And I have 3 growing children, so we use their labor as well. So there's really not a great method. We do rotate crops. So we try to rest just various paddocks of our land. And we found that we also, like, as we're resting them, we graze some animals on there. And that's kind of helped with some of the like tricky weeds that we were having a hard time getting rid of. But it's just kind of an ongoing battle. Like we just battle weeds all season long. And we did just last year purchase a walk behind cultivator, which is kind of less intrusive to the land, in terms of like protecting like the tillage, and that's been a game changer too, but it's just kind of a constant thing all summer long that we battle our weeds.
Thanks, everyone.
We did get a question in the chat wondering if any of the panelists can speak to using any no-till practices.
We at Bearview Gardens, we try and we do low till, so it's tilling as little as possible. And, I only came to Bearview Gardens in the last 2 years, but, Michelle and Rick have been trying to move away from reliance on tilling. But as far as Bearview Gardens, we don't practice no till, but we're trying to move towards it. It's, as anybody who has farmed knows, no till is hard. Tilling is really, really important for much of the activities that people do on their farms. So I can't say that we personally are at no till, but moving towards it and working within your means, what you can do, tilling as little as possible to still produce the amount of crops you need to produce and get the work done that you need to, is sort of the goal for us for now.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, we're farming on 3 to 4 acres right now, but even that, it would be a challenge to do no-till. So we try to be mindful about our tillage. We have a spader that we prefer to use over a rototiller because it's a little bit more gentle on the soil structure. And so we chisel plow our disc and then go through with a spader rather than rely completely just on a rotavator or rototiller that really does invert your soil structure. But yeah, we don't do any no-till or even low-till. We just try to kind of be mindful of it.
Thank you for sharing. Any other questions? All right. If there's no other questions, I just want to say thank you again to our 4 panelists for taking the time out of your Tuesday to offer up your information and perspectives. I will have this recorded and posted on the Specialty Producers YouTube channel if anyone wants to reference it later. And if you have any further questions after the webinar, you can feel free to email me and I will do my best to answer your question or direct you to a producer or someone who can. Thank you, everyone.